A priest, a thief, and an engineer are sentenced to death by guillotine. The executioner tells the priest that he can say one last thing before he's executed. So, the priest prays to God to spare his life. As the priest is about to be executed, the guillotine blade gets stuck halfway down. Now, according to the law, if the guillotine fails to kill the person, they're set free. So, the priest is let go. Next up is the thief. Considering what had just happened with the priest, he also prays to God to have his life spared. Once again, the guillotine fails and the thief is let go. Finally, it's the engineer's turn. Instead of praying, he spends his last moments looking at the guillotine. Just as the executioner is about to release the guillotine, the engineer says,
"Oh, I see the problem."
The banker saw his old friend Tom, an 80-year-old rancher, in town. Tom had lost his wife a year or so before, and rumor had it that he was marrying a mail-order bride. Being a good friend, the banker asked Tom if the rumor was true. Tom assured him that it was. The banker then asked Tom the age of his new bride-to-be. Tom proudly said,
"She'll be 21 in November."
Now the banker, being the wise man that he was, could see that a young woman could not be satisfied by an 80-year-old man. Wanting his old friend's remaining years to be happy, the banker tactfully suggested that Tom should consider getting a hired hand to help him out on the ranch, knowing nature would take its own course. Tom thought this was a good idea and said he would look for one that afternoon. About 4 months later, the banker ran into Tom in town again. "How's the new wife?" asked the banker. Tom proudly said,
"Good, she pregnant."
The banker, happy that his sage advice had worked out, continued, "And how's the hired hand?" Tom replied,
"She pregnant too."
A man is chosen for jury duty, but very much wants to be dismissed from serving. He tries every excuse he can think of, but none of them work. On the day of the trial, he decides to give it one more shot. As the trial is about to begin, he asks if he can approach the bench.
"Your Honor,"
he says,
"I must be excused from this trial because I'm prejudiced against the defendant. I took one look at the man over there in the blue suit with those beady eyes and that dishonest face, and I immediately thought, that man is a crook. He's guilty. So, Your Honor, I could not possibly remain on this jury."
With tired annoyance, the judge replies,
"Get back in the jury box. That man is his lawyer."
There was a farmer who grew watermelons. He was doing pretty well, but he was disturbed by some local kids who would sneak into his watermelon patch at night and eat his watermelons. After some careful thought, he came up with a clever idea that he thought would scare the kids away for sure. He made up a sign and posted it in the field. The next night, the kids showed up and they saw the sign, which read, "Warning! One of the watermelons in this field has been injected with cyanide." The kids ran off, made up their own sign, and posted it next to the farmer's. When the farmer returned, he surveyed the field. He noticed that no watermelons were missing, but the sign next to his read, "Now there are 2." 2 doctors are treating a man with lung disease. They explain how his smoking marijuana has led to his condition worsening.
"But it's just herbal,"
the patient protests.
"How can it be bad for you?"
One of the doctors sighs. "Nature isn't all that innocent. Apple seeds contain lethal amounts of cyanide. In fact, there is a certain plant in my garden that will kill you if you sit under it for just 5 minutes. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe." The man seems to accept the doctor's explanation and promises to stop smoking marijuana. After the patient leaves, the doctors go to lunch. As they're sitting down to eat, the second doctor asks,
"Oh, by the way, What is that plant that you have in your garden that kills you if you sit under it?
The other doctor replies, "Oh, a water lily." A man's 80th birthday is coming up and his friends want to get him a special gift. Considering he has been a widower for many years, and after some discussion, they decide to have an escort come to his house that night and give him the time of his life. Later that evening, as the old man is getting ready for bed, he hears his doorbell ring. As he opens the door, he is shocked to see a beautiful woman standing there in a sexy outfit. The woman says to the senior,
Happy birthday!
Taken aback, the old man replies,
Thank you, young lady. What can I do for you?
The woman says,
Your friend sent me as a gift. I'm here to give you super sex.
The old man thinks about her offer for a moment, then replies,
I'll take the soup.
Cinderella was now 75 years old. After a fulfilling life with the now passed away prince, she sat happily upon her rocking chair, watching the world go by from her front porch, with a cat named Alan for companionship. One sunny afternoon, out of nowhere, appeared the fairy godmother. Cinderella said,
Fairy godmother, what are you doing here after all these years?
The fairy godmother replied,
Well, Cinderella, as you have lived a good and wholesome life since we last met, I have decided to grant you 3 wishes. Is there anything for which your heart still yearns?
Cinderella was overjoyed, and after some thoughtful consideration, almost under her breath, she uttered her first wish.
I wish I was wealthy beyond comprehension.
Instantly, her rocking chair was turned into solid gold. Cinderella was stunned. Alan, her old faithful cat, jumped off her lap and scampered to the edge of the porch, quivering with fear. Cinderella said,
Oh, thank you, fairy godmother.
The fairy godmother replied,
It's the least I can do. What does your heart desire for your second wish?
Cinderella looked down at her frail body and said,
I wish I were young and full of the beauty of youth again.
At once, her wish became reality, and her beautiful, youthful visage returned. Cinderella felt stirrings inside her that had been dormant for years, and long-forgotten vigor and vitality began to course through her very soul. Then the fairy godmother again spoke.
You have one more wish. What will you have?
Cinderella looked over to the frightened cat in the corner and said,
I wish you to transform Alan, my old cat, into a beautiful and handsome young man.
Magically, Alan suddenly underwent a fundamental change in his biological makeup. That, when complete, he stood before her, a boy so beautiful, the likes of which neither she nor the world had ever seen. The fairy godmother again spoke.
Congratulations, Cinderella. Enjoy your new life.
And with a blazing shock of bright blue electricity, she was gone. For a few eerie moments, Alan and Cinderella looked into each other's eyes. Cinderella sat breathless, gazing at the most stunningly perfect boy she'd ever seen. Then, Alan walked over to Cinderella, who sat transfixed in her rocking chair, and held her close in his strong, youthful arms. He leaned in close to her ear, whispered, blowing her golden air with his warm breath. I bet you regret having me neutered now, don't you? A ball of string rolls into a bar and sits down. He asks for a drink, but the bartender tells him apologetically,
Sorry, we don't serve strings here.
Confused, the string leaves and goes home. A few days later, the string returns to the bar, this time sitting at a different end of the bar. He asks for another drink, and the bartender responds,
Hey, aren't you that string from the other day? I told you, we don't serve strings here.
Dejected, the string leaves and returns home once again. A few weeks go by, and the string decides to try his luck one more time. He ties himself up and pulls apart the top of his string to change his appearance. He enters the bar, sits down, and orders a drink. The bartender looks long and hard, then says,
Hey, you look familiar. You've definitely been around here. Aren't you that string from a while back?
The string looks him straight in the eye and says coolly,
Nope. I'm afraid not.
Frank is hard of hearing and recently bought a new hearing aid. He is so happy with his new hearing aid that when he sees his friend Joe, he has to tell him about it. Frank says,
Hey, Joe, remember that old hearing aid I used to have? The one with the receiver in the shirt pocket? Remember how I was always messing with it, trying to turn up the volume? Boy, I've got a new hearing aid that's opened up a whole new world for me. I'm hearing things I've never heard before. Everything is coming in loud and clear. I got it for only $1,000 wholesale. If the company that made this hearing aid wanted me to do a commercial for it, I'd do it, and they wouldn't even have to pay me. I can hear a pin drop on a carpet in the next room.
Joe responds,
Well, Frank, that sounds great. What kind is it?
Frank looks at his watch and says,
About 4:15.